Hello there. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Aquaba, Mariam Buntang to all my friends from all over the world. It's your man Yao Fusu. Today, I want to teach a little something. So, please, give me your mind, give me all your attention for a few minutes, and let's learn something. All right? The topic today is the transatlantic slave trade. Where do negroes come from? Let me repeat the topic. The transatlantic slave trade. Where do negroes come from? All right, now, if you believe in Western education, I mean, living in the Western Hemisphere, the education that we've been forced into believing is pretty much false. All right, now, look here. I don't have a PhD, and I'm okay with it because there were a lot of things that I didn't agree with ever since I was a child in school. All right? Now, I'll give you a few examples. All right? Going to school here in America, we were taught that there are 9 planets in the solar system, 7 continents in this world. False. Heck, we were even told that Christopher Columbus discovered America. I mean, these are some things that boggles my mind at my age right now when I think about the false information that we've been fed since we were in pre-K to whatever level of education you got. All right, now, one thing I want to make very clear is that black people, anybody that look like me, it's not just, how can I put it? It's not just native to Africa. Okay? Now, before the white man was able to build ships and sail around the world and tell history, his story, black people that look like me have been able to travel to all 4 corners of this planet that we live in. Okay? I'll open your eyes to that. Now, one thing is, I myself have traveled around the world, and I'm not saying that to brag, and I've seen people that look like me in places you wouldn't believe. Places like Malaysia, there are black people, native black people from Malaysia. Okay? In the Philippines, there are native black people from the Philippines. Actually, the main island, Luzon in the north, the real natives are black people. Okay? Of course, Australia, I mean, you have to be living under a rock not to know that Australia really belong to black people. They're called the Aborigines. If you don't know, heck, even Western Europe, Ireland was the natives, the natural inhabitants of Ireland were black people. They were called the Druids. Now, anything that I'm saying here, if you have any quarrels, if you have any misunderstandings, please do a research on anything that I say. If you're new to my channel, subscribe, open your mind, and you may learn something. Listen, if I could teach or if I could make one person learn something from anything that I teach, I'm happy. I'm not about creating content for the whole world. My idea is to teach, to make just one person learn something, which is the truth about this world. All right, now let's get to some stuff. Now, the Trans-Sahara slave trade. I'm gonna do another topic on that. The Trans-Sahara slave trade that actually started about 700 years before the Europeans took captives. I'm not gonna use slaves for any African taken from the continent. I'm not gonna use that word slave. I will use the word captive because there were no slaves in Africa. Okay? And what I mean by there were no slaves in Africa is the different type of slavery that existed in Africa was not called chattel slavery like the white people did across the pond here in the Americas. All right? I was saying before they are black people pretty much in any so-called continent that you'll find on this earth today. There are people that have skin like this or darker than I am. Okay, now phenotypically, not all black skinned people are, how can I say it, are kin folks. All right. I could give you an example. Like, if you go to Papua New Guinea, humongous island. Okay, now half of it is being stolen by Indonesia. The natives that are on that island, and not just Papua New Guinea, Guadalcanal. There are a bunch of islands in the Pacific that are totally inhabited by black people. Okay, I'm not even talking about the Andaman Islands in south of India, and what is it called? The Sentinel Islands. I'm not talking about those. There are a bunch of islands that if you go to today, not just today, for thousands of years, were inhabited by what? People that look like me. During World War II, American soldiers used to be shocked when they were going to islands thinking it will be inhabited by Asians, and they will see people that look like what? Like me. All right. Let's move on. Okay. So some of the lies you've been heard about the transatlantic slave trade. Let's count down from no. Let's count up from 1 to 10. Number 1, right, is that black people are only in Africa. I spoke about that. That's not true. Okay. Now I know back in the days you used to hear this song, no matter where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. That's BS. Total bull crap. Okay. Not only Africans are black skinned people. I remember one time I saw some Indian person in Singapore, black. I mean, like three shades, 4 shades, 5 shades darker than I am. Okay, and he was looking at me like, "What is this?" And I'm looking at him like, "What is this? Why are you so dark as an Indian?" But guess what? Just because his skin is dark doesn't mean he's an African. All right. First time I saw an Aborigine, I'm talking about pure Aborigine, an Australian Aborigine. They are the darkest skinned people on earth. Okay? But guess what? They are not native to Africa. Phenotypically, they will be in the negroid race like me, but they are not from Africa. If you get the point I'm trying to make here. Okay. Okay. So another lie you hear about the transatlantic slave trade is that it started, the Europeans started enslaving or capturing Africans in the year 1619. Pretty much, they brought the first Africans to the Americas in 1619. BS, nonsense, lies. The Portuguese had actually started more than a century before 1619, taking captives from Africa. Okay? Now, the first captives they took from Africa, they took them straight to Portugal. If you don't know, you can do your research. Okay? Now, Portuguese even took African captives to India. Do your research. They took African captives to India first. Now, they are still there today in India. Their population is very small, but they are still there. And they are called the cities. If you want to find out about them, you could just Google or go on YouTube or whatever. You'll find out they are black people that were taken from Africa into India. They are called the cities. If you want me to spell it for you, I will. It's S-I-D-I. You could type in the city people of India and you'll find them. Okay? Heck, the Portuguese even took black people from East Africa to China. They tried to make the Chinese enslave us. But the Chinese were like, no, thank you. No, thank you. We got too much people here. We got our own form of slavery, so we don't need people from other lands to enslave. If you think I'm lying, do your research and you'll find out what I'm saying is true. All right? Number 3. Okay? Another myth, biggest lie you hear about the transatlantic slave trade is that the Europeans went to Africa and just kidnapped Africans. Bull crap, nonsense, lies. Okay? The Europeans were very smart. Okay? The Europeans went to Africa as what? As traders, missionaries. They went as religious people with the Bible and the cross. We are holy people. Okay? For over a century, over 100 years, the Europeans were trading with Africans. Okay? Now, before they started the slavery nonsense, these people were doing what? They were observing. I mean, they had their motives. They have hidden motives about what they wanted to do. Okay? They were observing the Africans. If you don't know, they observed them and they came to a conclusion that, first of all, Africa is a humongous continent. Bigger than they will actually show you on any globe. With thousands of languages and ethnic groups. Okay? Now, if you don't know, somebody living in the western point of Africa, let's say somebody living in Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, going close to Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Mali, Niger, Ghana, anybody living on the western coast of Africa looks entirely different from somebody living on the eastern coast of Africa. For example, if you see somebody from Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, or even northern Kenya, and you compare them to somebody from West Africa, entirely, totally different people. phenotypically, we are all negroes from one continent, but somebody from Senegal and somebody from Ethiopia may look like aliens to each other. That's how vast Africa is. Okay? Somebody living in North Africa and somebody living in southern part of Africa might as well be aliens to each other. All right? So these Europeans were smart. They noticed that Africans are not one people. And what is happening to an African in the north could be careless. I mean, could be somebody living in the east coast of Africa or west coast of Africa wouldn't give a crap about what's happening to somebody in the north or south. Okay? See, when you're watching TV, a lot of the image that come to people's mind is a 1980s Ethiopian starvation or whatever. That was just one country in Africa. But that is the image that the Western media, the Western propaganda keep pushing towards, especially African Americans. Why? Because they don't want African Americans to know about their continent. All right? They also noticed that many African tribes, through a certain period of time, for about, I could say, almost 2 centuries, there were major tribal wars between tribes. That's when they took advantage. Because if you know or you don't know, I'm going to tell you this. About 90% of the people that were taken from the continent, maybe 90 is a bit too much, but I'll give it up about 60 to 70% of the captives that were taken from the continent were prisoners of war from tribes. I mean, tribal wars, Africans were banging on each other. Africans are the original gangsters of gang banging. They were banging on each other. I could give you some of the tribes that were fighting each other, okay? You see, from what is now like Mauritania all the way down to Angola, Congo, that's where majority of the captives were taken from to the Americas. Now, who were the countries or who were the Europeans that were taking the captives from Africa? Majority of the captives that were taken from Africa was done by the Portuguese. That country, that little country in south of Europe, Portugal. Yes. The Portuguese, they started it first. Joined by the Spaniards. Well, the Iberian Peninsula is Spain and Portugal. In that peninsula, they started it first. Portugal number 1, Spain number 2. Then the French joined in. The Danes, Denmark, yes, that little country, Denmark, they joined in. Okay, Sweden. Now, if you don't know anything, you may think Sweden, Swedish people are peaceful. They are a peaceful country. They never bother anybody. Sweden did a lot of horrible things in Africa. Oh yeah. Okay? And then the Jambus, the English, when they find out how much money Spain and Portugal were making, they joined in. Okay, now, the number of captives that were taken from Africa, the Portuguese took about 41%, 41% into what is now Brazil and Argentina. See, Argentina actually had more black people taken from Africa into Argentina than how much black people came to what is now United States of America. But if you go to Argentina today, you can barely see any Africans. Now, that's another topic that I'm gonna have to do. The genocide of black people in Argentina after slavery was abolished. If you don't know, do a research and you find out what I'm talking about. Okay? Now, about 40, another 48% of the captives that were taken by the French and the Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, the Danes, this and that. Even the Dutch joined in very late, came to the West Indies. Okay, majority of them going to Cuba, and then Haiti, Jamaica, and then the other small islands, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Suriname, Bahamas, all the islands, Puerto Rico. Of course, Puerto Rico received a share of African captives too. And some went as far south as what is now Guyana, French Guyana. Okay? Only about 5%, not even 5% of African captives taken came to what is now United States of America. Now, one thing people ought to know is that the Portuguese, the Spaniards, and the French, they didn't discriminate who they took. Okay, so like I could give you an example. The French headquarters for slavery were based in the Benin, what is it called? The Benin, what is now Benin area. Okay, and they took majority of the captives from there. So basically, with the French, they used to take a bunch of people that speak the same language. I'll give you an example. You see Haiti, majority of the people that went to Haiti were from the Benin, Togo area. They all spoke the same language. That's why they were able to pretty much hold on to their culture. Okay, and that made them stronger. The Portuguese took different tribes to the Congo, to Cuba, to all kinds of places, but majority going to Brazil. Okay, now see the English, when the English joined in, their system was entirely different. What they did was the English system was more brutal than the Portuguese, the Spaniards, or the French. Okay? What they used to do is, first of all, the English kicked out the Portuguese out of what is now called Ghana. Okay? If you don't know, you could do your research, you'll find out what I'm saying is true. They kicked out the Portuguese and the Danes. Ghana, the Gold Coast, used to belong to the Danes and the Portuguese. The Danes were fighting the Portuguese for that strategic location. And then the British came with their superior manpower and firepower and drove the Danes and the Portuguese out of there. Now, any captive that were taken from what is now Ghana, Elmina and Cape Coast and all those other forts from, by the British, were shipped to Jamaica A few percentage came to what is now United States, and English colonies in the West Indies. Their system was the hardest. Okay, first of all, the British was was picky. What I mean by picky is that with the British system, they looked for Africans. Okay, they used to choose Africans that have to be a certain height and a certain age. Don't let Hollywood fool you. You see these movies from Amistad to whatever, and you see men, grown men, captives in ships. That's not the way it was. That's a lie. That's another lie. Okay? With the British system, most, if not all, of the captives were teenagers. Oh yeah, teenagers. Okay? A 20-year-old or a 25-year-old was very less valuable as a captive. I don't like to use the word slave. As a captive, because by the time they get them to America, they only have about a few years of work from them. They used to take teenagers. Okay? Male and female. If you don't know, now you know. I know sometimes you may see old paintings of African captives. You see a whole family, and sometimes you see the mother with the baby on the back and all this and that. That was the Portuguese. They used to take entire families from the Congo, Angola region to Brazil. Not the British. The British had an age minimum. Okay? Captives taken to Jamaica, to America, Grenada, Bahamas, blah, 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 all the English colonies were teenagers. Teenagers. So they could get the most years out of them. All right? Let's see what else I could share to you guys. Now, I know some people also think that all Europeans took part of the transatlantic slave trade, but not all of them. Okay? You'll be shocked. Some countries like Germany and Italy didn't take part in shipping Africans from Africa to the New World, the Americas. However, I'm not saying they are innocent. I'm not saying that by any means necessary. You see, before the ships used to leave Europe to Africa to take captives, guess what? The Pope, the European Pope, used to bless those ships. Okay? So, especially if you're a black man and you're a Catholic, that's something you need to think about. All right? See what else I could share to you guys. Now, the British, they also noticed something that sometimes if some captives were from the same tribe, they become troublemakers. Okay, now since majority of their shipment was done through what is now called Ghana, the Gold Coast, a lot of Akan tribesmen were taken to Jamaica. And these Akan tribesmen were such troublemakers. I mean, they called them the Maroons. They were the hardest rebellious people the British has ever met or ever captured. Out of all the African tribes that they took, the Akans, the Maroons, were rebellious troublemakers. Okay? They are still out there in Jamaica, Grenada, and a bunch of other islands in the West Indies. These guys were troublemakers. Okay? Look, the British system was so tough. If they find out two Africans speaking the same language, the punishment was so severe. I mean, they used to do such things as buck breaking. Now, I'm on YouTube, so I cannot explain what buck breaking is. But if you want to know what buck breaking is, you could actually look it out yourself. I don't know if you could find it through Google, but look it out and you may know what it is. Okay? Now, some of the captives in islands like Jamaica, especially the Akan tribe people, no matter what the white enslavers did to them, they did their best to hide their culture and their names. Look, there are some Jamaicans in Jamaica today, 2020, 2022. They still got names like Kwame, which is an Akan name, Kojo, Akan name, Kwesi, Akan name, Yahweh, Akan name. They used to hide those names. Okay? They may be named after the enslaver, Mr. Trevor or Mr. Donovan or Mr. whatever. But the mothers and their grandparents used to tell them, listen, your African name is Kofi. But you cannot let them know, because if they find out your name is Kofi, they will kill you. If they find out your name is Kwame, they will kill you. Okay? If you think I'm lying, do your research and you find out about these things. Now, some of the myths or lies you used to hear about the transatlantic slave traders that as soon as the captives got to America, they pretty much accepted it, their fate. They accepted it as we are slaves and this and that. No, not at all. That's not true. Many captives that got to the Americas fought back. Heck, even before the ships could leave Africa and sail across the Atlantic to the Americas, there were times when some captives, especially if they speak the same language, they were able to break through their chains and take over the ships, and sometimes return the ships back to Africa, kill the enslavers, the white people, and steer their way back to west coast of Africa. It happens. Okay? That's why the British separated the captives. They made sure, like on the west coast of Ghana, there's a tribe called the Fantis. The Fantis. I'm not talking about the Ashantis now. I'm talking about the Fantis. These guys were hired by the British. This is no lie. These guys used to help the British to pretty much separate the tribes, because the Fantis used to tell the British, okay, this guy here, he's a Mandinka. This one is let's say a Wolof. This one is a Igbo. This one is a Yoruba. This one is a Ashanti. This one is a this. This one is a that. They used to separate the tribes for the British. So most of the time, let's say there's a ship carrying 900 captives. Most of them did not understand each other, because they would chain an Ashanti and a Yoruba man together, or maybe they would chain a Mandinka and a Hausa man together, or they would change a Fulani man to an Igbo man, so they could never understand each other. Do you dig what I'm saying? these people were smart. And especially the women, when they got here to the Americas, the women were forced to mate with men that were total strangers to them. Okay, and that was a big, huge problem. Because even today in Africa, you cannot get an Igbo woman to engage in intercourse with a Mandinka man. You cannot get a Yoruba woman to engage sexually with a Hausa man. These things still exist till today, 2022. Okay? So there were a lot of things that were going on. I know, listen, the women captives that were brought into this country, okay, they used to force them. The only way the women would submit, they used to tie them down, so the man can penetrate them from the back. It's called doggy style. Now, in today's world, you could ask any girl, what is your favorite position? They will tell you doggy style. Most of them don't know it's rape culture. All right? I said I wasn't going to make this video too long, but it's gotten out of hand. Let's keep it going for a little bit, and then I'll end it. I'm going to end it with this one. Another lie that you hear about the transatlantic slave trade is that all the captives that were brought to the Americas accepted their fate and just remained here. That's a lie. A lot of them committed suicide. Especially, there's a tribe called the Igbo. Some of them, soon as they used to their feet touch ground, they will walk back into the sea and drown themselves. If you think I'm lying, you could do your research on that too. Okay? Not all of them accepted their fate to be slaves in a foreign land. This is a major topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about. I'm going to end it here. My name is Yao Fusu. If this is the first time you bump it onto this channel, subscribe, like, share, do whatever you want to do. Let's keep this channel pushing up, all right? Take it easy.